Ever imagine, like, clocking out after work, meeting up with some coworkers for payday drinks, and then just vanishing?
This sounds like the start of a thriller
Well,
novel.
that's what happened to Jacqueline Brown in 1985, and they still haven't solved her murder.
Wow. 1985, that's what, like 40 years ago? Crazy how some cases just go cold.
Yeah. There's this audio episode that goes into her whole case, and it's wild, full of twists and dead ends.
So, what are like detectives for the day trying to crack the code?
Basically, we're going to try to figure out what went down that night, highlight the weirdest parts, and maybe even come up with some new theories.
Ooh, I love a good mystery. Count me in. Where do we start?
All right, so picture this. It's July 12th, 1985, 3 a.m., a quiet street in Dayton, Ohio. People are sound asleep, right? Then, bam, car horn blaring like crazy.
Oh man, I hate when that happens. Someone's always leaning on their horn at like 2 a.m. on my street.
Well, this wasn't just some annoying neighbor. Turns out it was Jacqueline Brown, slumped over the wheel of her car, shot.
Oh wow, so someone actually got hurt. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, really sad. Witnesses said she told them she'd been robbed and shot, but died before she could say anything else.
That's awful. So, did they catch the killer?
That's the thing. The whole investigation is full of roadblocks.
Yeah.
Like, the cops find a .45 caliber casing on her car, but the bullet they pull out of her body is a .38, meaning it was a revolver.
Wait, wouldn't that mean two guns were involved, or at least two different shootings?
Exactly. It gets weirder, though. Most of the fingerprints they find are hers, and the other ones don't really lead them anywhere.
So, no smoking gun, literally. Talk about frustrating.
Yeah, total dead end. But they do have one lead. The last people to see Jacqueline alive were her coworkers.
Oh, juicy. Always gotta watch out for the coworkers.
Right, so Jacqueline worked the night shift at a factory, and that night was payday, so they all went out to celebrate.
Payday drinks. Who hasn't been there?
Exactly. Anyway, she invited 3 of them. Theodora, they called her Teddy, Donnie, and Roger, back to her place for an after-party.
Sounds like a good time, so what went wrong?
Here's the thing. All 3 of them say they waited at her apartment, but she never showed up.
Sounds fishy.
Right. And when you start looking into their stories, it gets even more suspicious.
Let's hear it. Lay it on me.
Okay, so Teddy's story is all over the place. She tells the cops she saw Jacqueline's car going in a different direction, claiming she was going to score some drugs.
Maybe she just wanted to ditch her coworkers. Happens to the best of us.
Yeah, maybe. But then she starts trying to bring in other people, mentioning these drug connections, but the police can't verify any of it.
Ah, so she's throwing out red herrings, trying to lead them on a wild goose chase. Classic.
Exactly. Then there's Donnie. First, he acts like he doesn't even know Jacqueline, which is super weird since they were just at the bar together.
Okay, that's just plain suspicious. What's he hiding?
Who knows? But then he says that her husband must have killed her, even though Jacqueline was single.
Ooh, throwing the husband under the bus when there isn't one. That's bold.
I know, right? To top it all off, all 3 of them fail their polygraph tests.
Whoa, so they're all lying.
Well, polygraphs aren't perfect, but it definitely makes you wonder, especially with all the other weird stuff they were saying.
No kidding. But they can't just pin it on the coworkers, right? I mean, there has to be more to the story.
You're right. The police followed up on other leads, too. One tip sent them to this guy named Donald, a known drug dealer in the area where they found Jacqueline.
Oh, so maybe it was a drug deal gone bad. Makes sense.
It does, except for one little detail. Donald was in jail when the murder happened.
Wait, what? So he's out of the picture. This is getting complicated.
Totally. Then they got another tip from this guy named Wayne. He claims Jacqueline left the bar with someone her friends knew, but he wouldn't say who.
Ugh, talk about frustrating. Why even bother giving a tip if you're going to leave out the most important part?
It's like he knew something but was too scared to say. Or maybe he was trying to protect someone? Who knows?
This is like one big puzzle with half the pieces missing.
And it gets even more complicated. Jacqueline's mother hired private investigators, and they got a tip from a prison inmate about some guy who'd gotten into a fight with Jacqueline.
Oh, wow. So maybe it was personal. Someone with a grudge.
Maybe, but the police looked into it and couldn't find anything to back it up.
Another dead end. Seriously, what is going on with this case?
I know, right? It's like every time they get a lead, it just fizzles out.
So what happened then? Did they ever find the killer?
Sadly, that's kind of where things went cold. Despite everyone's efforts, the case just stalled.
Man, that's rough. All those questions and no answers. What about Jacqueline's family? Did they ever get closure?
That's what we'll talk about next.
It's tough, when a case goes cold like that. But at least it wasn't forgotten.
You're right about that. It was reopened in 2008 and then again recently. They even ran some fancy new DNA tests on the evidence.
Oh, wow. So, like, cutting-edge forensic stuff. Did they find anything?
Unfortunately, no. No new leads came up. But there's still one guy who's determined to crack this case.
Who's that?
Retired Detective Doyle Burke. He actually worked on the case back in '85, and now he's rejoined the cold case unit.
Wow, that's dedication. After all these years, he's still on the case.
I know. It makes you wonder what drives him.
Maybe he just, like, can't let it go, you know? Like, needs to finish what he started.
I guess some cases just stick with you, especially when there are so many unanswered questions.
Speaking of questions, we've gone over a ton of details. Where does that leave us? What do we actually know about what happened to Jacqueline?
It's like a giant puzzle, and we only have a few pieces, like we still don't know if she really did go meet someone after leaving the bar.
And what about the motive? Was it a robbery gone wrong? Or was it those shady drug connections?
Or maybe something completely different, something personal even.
Right. Like, what if those coworkers know more than they're saying?
It wouldn't be the first time someone kept quiet to protect themselves or someone else.
So many possibilities. But how do we get to the truth after all this time?
Well, Detective Burke seemed to think someone out there knows something. Maybe they saw a car that night or overheard a conversation and just didn't think it was important.
Yeah, sometimes it's those little details that crack a case wide open.
Exactly. And that's kind of why we're talking about all this. Maybe someone listening remembers something, even if it seems small or insignificant.
You never know what might trigger a memory.
Right. And that's why it's so important to share any information you have with the police. No detail is too small.
Seriously, folks, if you know something, say something.
You can call the Dayton Police Department Cold Case Tip Line at 937-333-7109. It could make all the difference.
It's amazing how, like, just hearing about this stuff can bring back memories.
I know, right? And even though this happened years ago, it's a good reminder that these kinds of things can happen anywhere.
Yeah, it makes you think about your own life, your own loved ones. It could happen to anyone.
And it's also a reminder that we all have a role to play in seeking justice.
Totally. We can't just forget about these cases. We have to keep fighting for the truth.
That's why it's so important to keep these stories alive. For Jacqueline, for her family, and for everyone who deserves justice.
It's about more than just finding a killer. It's about healing a community.
Exactly. Unsolved cases like this leave a scar, and sometimes all it takes is one person to help heal that wound.
And who knows? That person could be listening right now.
You're absolutely right. It's crazy to think how much this case still affects people, even after all these years.
I know, right? It shows that these stories, they stay with us. They're about real people, real families.
And it reminds us that we can't let these cases fade away. We have to keep pushing for answers.
Exactly. Every victim deserves justice, no matter how much time has passed.
And that's where our listeners come in, right? Someone out there might have that one missing piece of the puzzle.
That one little detail they've been holding on to, thinking it's not important.
But you never know. It could be the key to solving this whole thing. So if you know anything at all about Jacqueline Brown's case,
Anything. Seriously, anything at all.
please call the Dayton Police Department Cold Case Tip Line at 937-333-7109.
You could be the one to finally bring closure to this mystery.
It's been over 35 years, but it's not too late for justice.
Never too late. And hey, even if you don't have any information about this specific case,
Yeah,
it's still good to be aware of these unsolved mysteries, you know?
totally. They remind us that there are still so many families out there searching for answers.
And maybe, just by talking about these cases, we can help bring some of them to light.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the unsolved case of Jacqueline Brown.
A fascinating case, but definitely a tough one.
It's a story that really makes you think, about the fragility of life, the importance of justice.
And the power of never giving up hope.
Exactly. So until next time, keep those wheels turning, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep into those mysteries.
And who knows, maybe we'll be back with another case soon.